Hello guys, it's our new video and today we're gonna continue speaking about JavaScript. What we're gonna speak now is delegated JavaScript supports implicit and explicit delegation, functions as roles, traits, and mixins. JavaScript natively supports various function-based implementations of role patterns like traits and mixins. Such a function defines additional behavior by at least one method bound to this keyword within its function body. A role then has to be delegated explicitly via call or apply to objects that need to feature additional behavior that is not shared via the prototype chain. The prototype chain. Yeah. Зарядку принеси. Uh, a role then has to be delegated explicitly via call or reply, like I've said, and it has via prototype chain, object composition, and inheritance. Whereas explicit function-based delegation does cover composition in JavaScript. Implicit delegation already happens every time the prototype chain is walked in order to, for example, find a method that might be related to but is not directly owned by an object. Once the method is found, it gets called within this object's context. Thus, inheritance in JavaScript is covered by a delegation automatism that is bound to the prototype property of constructor functions. I've come back. Miscellaneous. JavaScript is a zero-index language. Runtime environment. JavaScript typically relies on a runtime environment. For example, a web browser to provide objects and methods by which scripts can interact with the environment. For example, a web page DOM. These environments are single-threaded. JavaScript also relies on the runtime environment to provide the ability to include import scripts, for example, HTML script elements. This is not a language feature per se, but it is common in most JavaScript implementations. JavaScript processes messages from a queue one at a time. JavaScript calls a function associated with each new message, creating a call stack frame with the functions, arguments, and local variables. The call stack shrinks and grows based on the function's needs. When the call stack is empty upon function completion, JavaScript proceeds to the next message in the queue. This is called the event loop, describes as run to completion, because each message is fully processed before the next message is considered. Whereas language concurrency model describes the event loop as non-blocking program input-output is performed using events and callback functions. This means, for instance, that JavaScript can process a mouse click while waiting for a database query to return information. Uh, Variadic functions. An undefined number of parameters can be passed to a function. The function can access them through formal parameters and also through the local arguments, objects. Variadic functions can also be created by using the blind methods. Array and object literacy. Mm, Variety of functions can also be created by using the blind method, like I already told you. Array and object literals. Like many scripting languages, array and objects, associative arrays in other languages, can each be created with a sufficient shortcut syntax. In fact, these literals form the basic of the JSON data format. Regular expressions. JavaScript also supports angular expressions in a manner similar to Perl, which provides a concise and powerful syntax for text manipulation that is more sophisticated than the built-in string functions. Mm, JavaScript, like I already told, also supports regular expressions similar to Perl. Promises and async await. JavaScript supports promises as async await for handling asynchronous operations. A built-in promise object provides functionality for handling promises and associating handlers with a asynchronic action's eventual result. Recently, combinatorial methods were introduced in the JavaScript specification, which allows developers to combine multiple JavaScript promises and do operate based on different scenarios. The methods introduced are promise raise, promise all, settled, and promise.any. Async await allows an asynchronous non-blocking function to be structured in a way similar to an ordinary synchronous function. Asynchronous non-blocking codes can be written with minimal overhead structures to traditional asynchronous blocking code. Я видео снимаю. Vendor-specific extensions. Historically, some JavaScript engineers supported these non-standard features. Conditional catch clause like Java, array comprehensions, and generated expressions like Python, conscious function expression, function args express the experimental syntax related array functions. ECMAScript for XML, an extension that adds native XML support to ECMAScript, unsupported in Firefox since version 21. So that was all for today. I suppose you definitely put your like, subscribe on our channel, and write back in comments whether you like what we are doing now. So guys, bye bye.